I'm really excited about this new interprofessional education program that we've started, and I just want to say thank you to the College of Public Health for playing such an instrumental role in the development of the program that we have. Now, what you have in front of you is a copy of the program, and I want to get into the details of this. I want to talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it. But before we get into it, I wanted to take a moment to really get into why we've developed this interprofessional education program and where we're going next, because I think that's the exciting part, because I think it's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of some of the great initiatives that we have. Ultimately, the reason for this new interprofessional education program is we have to change our approach from an educational standpoint to improve health in our country. Interprofessional education is a critical step to ensure that we have interprofessional collaboration. I mean, it's as simple as that. Now, I've been a registered pharmacist now for about 21 years, and I can give you plenty of clinical examples of where I practiced in cardiothoracic surgery and the coronary care unit, where that if I didn't work with the attending physician and the hospitalist and the nurses and the lab, I could not do the job that I needed to do and be part of the team to ensure that patients got optimal patient care. But not only do we have individual clinical examples, but the emphasis on population-based care has really manifested over the last 5+ years. So that population approach in terms of preventative care, a population approach in terms of the management of chronic disease states that we see all the time, diabetes and hypertension and dyslipidemia. And also the concept that we have to work better together, not only within the systems that we have, but systems within the healthcare system need to work better together. And back in February, you guys had Julio Frank provide a presentation as part of the Leading Voices series. In his recent publication, he makes the comment, health systems worldwide are struggling to keep up as they become more complex and costly, placing additional demands on healthcare workers. You, me, all of us. But the second statement out of this article that I think is so critical why we need to expand our interprofessional education is because professional education has not kept pace with these challenges, largely because of fragmented, outdated, and static curricula that produce ill-equipped graduates. Now, that is a scathing evaluation of our health education system. I think some of it's right, but boy, ETSU and the Academic Health Sciences Center is so well prepared for now and the future. And I think the why we need interprofessional education is clear. It's to improve the health of the patients that we serve. And interprofessional education is a critical piece to make that happen. So what I wanted to do is, we'll certainly talk about the program and the nuts and bolts, but I did want to kind of go back and describe how we got to where we are. With the background that I just described, Dr. Bishop convened a retreat in January, 2 years ago, in 2011, that included the deans for each of the colleges in the Academic Health Sciences Center, department chairs, academic deans, associate deans within each of the colleges, faculty members, and some students. And basically laid out, utilizing the Frank article as a guidepost, basically to say, how can we expand interprofessional education? So Julio Frank and other colleagues wrote Health Professionals for a New Century. And this was the guiding document for our discussion, where we said, what can we do differently? How can we change our educational approach so that our students are best prepared to provide the best health and wellness for our patients? Now, this is a long, very thorough article. If you haven't seen a copy of this, I strongly encourage you to take a look at it. But one thing I wanted to focus that came out of this article is a concept of different levels of learning. There is informative, formative, and transformative learning. Now, many of us work from an educational standpoint on the informative and formative standpoint, but that tends to be in silos. The College of Pharmacy, the College of Public Health, the College of Nursing, whomever, tend to be siloed. What this article really emphasized is that we need to have informative and formative learning where we help develop experts and professionals around the concept of interprofessional collaboration in education, with the goal that we have transformative learning. And that is where we put out change agents around the concept of interprofessional education and interprofessional collaboration. Fantastic article. It really guided our discussion quite well. In July, Dr. Bishop then reconvened all the deans within the Academic Health Sciences Center and select individuals, basically to say it's time to put a structure and process to make this happen. Now, between those two retreats, another critical article came out, and that's referred to as the Core Competencies for Interprofessional Collaborative Practice. This article has been endorsed by the associations for nursing, osteopathic medicine, public health, pharmacy, dentistry, and medicine. So we can't find a better consensus article out there. I mean, this is endorsed by all of these individuals. And what's beautiful about this is this puts a process by which we can develop a competency-based approach with 4 competencies, again, around interprofessional collaborative practice: values and ethics, roles and responsibilities, interprofessional communication, and teams and teamwork. So now we really have all of the necessary foundation. And so what came out of that retreat were 2 things. The first thing that I heard as an attendee of that was a clear dedication and consensus of the deans within the Academic Health Sciences Center. This is where we're going. The second thing was the formation of the Interprofessional Education Committee. So Rob mentioned that I'm the Executive Associate Dean of the Gatton College of Pharmacy, but the hat I wear today is as chair of this committee. This committee has representation from all of the colleges within the Academic Health Sciences Center, as well as the Department of Psychology. If I could, the members of this committee from the College of Public Health, if you could raise your hand, please. All right, so we have Effiong, Rob, Megan, and Katie. These individuals have played a substantial role in the development of this program. We have met pretty much monthly since that October date, working very hard and debating what should we do. And we developed an interprofessional education program, which is what you have in front of you. Now, one thing I did want to just mention is the charge of this committee. Now, sometimes charges of committees can get boring, but I think this is important because our charge is to expand interprofessional education for professional and graduate students enrolled within the Academic Health Sciences Center at ETSU by building on existing interprofessional education and developing new efforts. We have substantial interprofessional education already, and so we certainly don't want to forget about what we already have, but our goal is to take it to the next level and to really have it where we have a consistent effort that most students in the Academic Health Sciences Center will be part of. So, on September the 22nd, we had the start of our new interprofessional education program called the Prologue, and we enrolled our first cohort of the program, which this is a pilot program, and it includes 45 students from all 5 colleges that have basically voluntarily enrolled in this program for a 2-year process. And that's what I want to do, is really just take the last few minutes to tell you what the program entails. And then at the end, after we've talked about all this, I'd like to answer any questions or hear any comments you may have about the program. So again, what you have in front of you would be a copy of this program that includes the Prologue, Experiences, and Capstone. Now, what's unique about this program is we tried to break away from curricula. And why I say that is if you look at all the colleges within the Academic Health Sciences Center, we all start and finish at a different time in terms of the calendar year. We have completely different schedules, and it was very difficult to try to combine those presently. So we tried to really maximize what we currently have and see how could we do something outside of curricula in terms of the program. You can see a composite of those students who have volunteered for this program on the left-hand side. Again, it's 45 students. So if you're looking at this page, I just want to focus on the first. There's 3 phases of the program. Each of these phases progressively go from informative education to formative education with the hope that the third phase facilitates transformative learning. That's what we're shooting for. So if you look at phase 1, that's the prologue. This again occurred on September the 22nd. I'd like to really say thank you to Brian Cross and Reed Blackwelder from the College of Pharmacy and Medicine, respectively. They developed an amazing prologue. And this developed an energy in this group of students that I think is really going to help them during the whole 2-year process. So as part of the prologue, basically it was informative learning where we talked about why you should do interprofessional education, but that was a very short piece. They broke out into groups and really did team building and talked about the competencies, went through some case examples such as drug abuse in the region that everybody's familiar with, even depending on where they are on their each of their curricula. It was really a wonderful day, and I think started things off with a bang. Now we've moved into the experiences, and if you look to the second part of phase 2 of your handout there, what we've done is the expectation is every student who's part of this pilot program will complete one of 4 different experiences. These are competency-based experiences. Now you'll see the experiences are exactly like the competencies that we saw in the previous document: values and ethics, teams and teamwork, roles and responsibilities, and interprofessional communication. Now we already have some great interprofessional courses across the Academic Health Sciences Center. So we basically said, so long as the vetting committee looked at the course and agreed with the concept, that courses that have been vetted that meet these competencies, which are clearly delineated with objectives under each of the competencies, that courses can count. So again, taking advantage of what we already have. But courses can only count for 2 of the 4 experiences. The other experiences are activities that are out of the classroom. And these are self-selected experiences where the student, every semester, will have a number of opportunities to choose. We had 8 experiences this semester that students signed up for in each of these 4 competencies, where they self-select what they would like to do. And so over the 2-year period, students either complete courses or activities to meet each of these 4 competencies. So everybody's doing something different. But so long as they're competency-based, everybody's getting a comparable education. So the importance of the competency-based approach, these are on the formative level. We're hoping to professionalize these students around the concept, building on their knowledge of who they are and learning certainly from the others that are present. Now, within this, I guess it probably would be apt. What's our definition of interprofessional education? It's when 2 or more professions get together to learn with, from, and about each other. So they can't just be sitting in the same classroom together. They have to learn from and about each other. And so these experiences have been built around that concept. So once students complete this, when we get into spring of 2014, we will have a capstone event. And I will be honest, we have no idea what this capstone event is going to be. We're still planning it. But the concept is it's going to be an event where students come together and do something unique that hopefully transforms them and builds on these 4 competency-based experiences that they've completed. Now, I'll give you an example of something that we've been toying with. The idea that students would show up one Saturday sometime in the spring for an event. They sign in, they form their teams, which are going to be multidisciplinary from the different colleges and everything, and all of a sudden the siren goes off on the VA campus, and we basically have a disaster that's occurred on the campus. And the only way for it to be resolved is for the teams working together to solve some end. That's still a work in progress, but I think you get the concept that we're going to have something that's unique and different, and hopefully the students are going to flourish because of the experiences that they've had as part of this program. So that's the general overview of the program. Again, we're only in the second of 4 semesters, still early on. The feedback regarding the prologue was phenomenal. I took part in that program, and I'll just be honest, it just was one of those days I went home and I was just really excited about what we're doing. And then the experiences, we had our first set of experiences from last semester, and don't get me wrong, we can always improve. There were very good suggestions on how we can tweak and improve. But overall, the consensus was the students had fun and loved to learn more about themselves and their other professions here within the Academic Health Sciences Center. So we are really at a unique point. And I can't imagine a better place to put forward a program like this and be better equipped, given that we have the 5 different colleges within the Academic Health Sciences Center and such a strong leadership here. So I'm really excited about it. I'll answer any questions here after we finish, but at this point, I suppose, Dr. Bishop, if you wanted to come up, and I guess this would be a good time for us to transition to...
Let's go to the web page first. If you scroll to the bottom of the home page, you'll find a link to the visioning process. So anything that we don't tell you today, you can probably find right here on the home page. When Dr. Nolan arrived on campus last January, he was faced with people with lots of ideas. He had lots of ideas, and he wanted to make sure that the university community was represented in making plans for a successful tenure of his presidency, and also for moving the university forward for the next 25 years. So since we had just completed our centennial, the idea of developing a committee for 125 means for our 125th birthday. So he assembled a group of distinguished educators, people who were familiar with our institution, who were familiar with the state system, and then some people not from around here, who were very familiar with higher education and where higher education is going over the next 25 years. And that group, which is actually the committee for 125, met initially the end of August last year. So August of 2012 was when they had their first meeting. And that group identified task forces, and you can see the ones that were included: academic programs and opportunities, academics and health sciences, and I'm very pleased we had our own task force, athletics, culture and outreach, extramural resources, sponsored programs, research service and instruction, and student life and services. The selection of task force members was done in multiple ways, but primarily the president, in consultation with this committee for 125, identified membership. It was highly sought after. We were surprised how many people were really interested in being on the task force. Your college was well represented. Again, Rob, Katie. Was it just two? Republic Health. Looks like I was thinking it was a third person. Adam Jarvis, who's an undergraduate student, and me. So you were well represented on the task force. Extremely well represented. But we had community reps, we had people from across the Academic Health Science Center, and we had people from our health systems that we affiliate with that were on board. Dr. Larry Calhoun chaired it. And he's going to talk to you about the deliberations and the discussions and our process that we used in the task force and the recommendations that we took forward in December to the committee for 125. So we were told to dream big. We took our big recommendations forward to the committee. They heard them. They discussed them. They're in the process of working with the consulting group that the NAPA group out of California that has been employed to work with us on this to develop a preliminary report. And that preliminary report is in process right now. And so they have the feedback from the task forces. They are working on things that they believe will be important to include in a final report, and that's the committee for 125. So everything that came out of the task forces may or may not be included in the final report. That's an important caveat. And then this is hot off the press. It has not been announced yet, but February the 28th from 4 to 6 p.m. in the Millennium Center, there will be a town hall. And that will be an opportunity to gather input from the larger community. So you all are invited and encouraged to attend that meeting. And they'll be posting probably on this website and on Planet ETSU and other places. And then there will be other forums and activities to get information. There's a website here where you can provide information. And then the Committee for 125 will take all of that information that will go in addition to the reports from the task force. And they plan to have their final report in May. So May is but between March and May, they'll be developing their final report. And that schedule of activity is on here if you click down to timeline. You just can't see it from across the room, but that's a breakdown of what it's like. So it's been a deliberative process. It's been an iterative process. It's been one that has already started some action. You all noticed a vote on Tuesday that may be attributed to the work of the task force on athletics. So it is sparking talk. It is creating ideas and putting them on the table so that they can be debated. And we know that if you don't identify where you're going, then you will never get anywhere. You'll continue to do the same things you've been doing and try to do them better. But if we can think about what if and what could we be and what kind of institution should we be in 25 years, then that's what we've been trying to do. So Dr. Calhoun, I'm going to let you take the microphone and tell them the substance of the work. Just while you're coming up, my dissertation was looking at time spans of capability. And, there are not many people who can work in a time span of 25 years. Because most people work in a time span of 5 to 10 years. That's about the planning range that most people are able to do. And so you'll find that they ask us to break down our recommendations in 5 to 10 years. They really knew that 25 years is a long time out. So if we can get started in 5 to 10 years, no telling where we'll be in 25.
Thank you. Good. Well, thanks for inviting us to be here today. This is something we spend a lot of time on, and one of the fun things for me is not too often do you get the challenge for coming up with where an organization needs to be in 25 years, knowing full well I'm not going to be here in 25 years to try to make this happen, right? So that's, you guys are going to be here in 25 years, a lot of you, to see where we go. And it'll be interesting to see, and I told the task force this, it'll be interesting to see in 2036, is that when 25 years occurs, what we really look like, in 2036. And I said, well, if you'll come to my nursing home, find me. I'll have a bib on watching ESPN, and let me know how it came out. All right. I was really I felt two different directions when Dr. Bishop and Dr. Nolan asked me to chair the task force. One, I like to build stuff. So that was exciting. Then all of a sudden I realized, whoa, I saw the committee and I thought, how am I going to get these type A personalities to a report in the short time that we had? And it actually came out to be a very good process and one which we're real proud of. All right, let me run through this. And actually, you can see this presentation by going online. And there's copies of this and the copies of the full report that you can see. The charge, what were we asked to do? And we actually had the president come to one of our meetings and talk about what he wanted us to do and how he would like for us to do it. And basically we were asked to take the expertise in the room and say, what if? And that was empowering to say, what if? And what if there weren't all these barriers? And not often are you asked to come up with what a university would look like and you don't have to worry about the money part. I mean, that's a pretty enlightening kind of environment. And so we had all of these opportunities that they gave us as just a list to get us started. We immediately threw that list away and talked about the process. They put us in charge of this. We're going to go where we want to go. Here's the process that we use, and I think it's important for you to sort of get an idea. Excuse me for standing in front of you. I'll be back up. Sort of get an idea of the process that we used. We used a method called future search, and I don't know whether any of you are familiar with that method of strategic planning or not, but it's a process that pretty much requires you to think big. And it gets you away from the minutia and quickly onto where you need to be. And to ask you questions about what are you doing well that you want to continue to do or do better. What are you not doing well that you need to change? What are some of the environmental barriers for you to move forward? Well, we went through that process as a committee, and we came up with some subgroups from that future search that said that we need to look at these 4 areas: new ways of learning, new clinical delivery systems in the next 25 years, the market needs. A lot of conversation about, we can come up with all the ideas here in this room all day long, but if it doesn't meet the market, and it's a waste of time. So competition. And we came to the conclusion pretty quickly, anybody that doesn't think we're in competition has got their head in the sand. And we're in competition with other universities, we're in competition in the market, we're in competition with the world. So that's a very important component. And then finally, you're going to see in our report the research initiatives, and the word research comes up a lot because we are a university. And then we came together as a full task force to identify the aspects of what the perfect environment would be for 2036. This is where the fun part really came in. And we divided that into 4 areas of what new programs do we need to be looking at. Interprofessional education and interprofessional practice. It's one thing for the education to be interprofessional. It's another thing for it to be the practice to be interprofessional. Facilities and infrastructure, and again, research. And then we made our draft report. These are our guiding assumptions. This kept coming up over and over again. So in our conversation, we started off saying, okay, let's get this out on the table. We don't need to bring these 4 things up about every single aspect of our recommendation. But interprofessional education is going to be at the core. Technology came up every conversation we had about any kind of activities 5, 10, and 25 years out. So assume that technology is going to be important. Continuous quality improvement. We're never there. Anything we recommend, it always can be changed or improved. And then finally, and this is an important aspect here, a new business model for the university in the next 25 years. Private sector leadership and private sector business model, you cannot overlay onto a university. But the historical way we have led and the historical way we have developed universities probably won't be successful in the future. So basically what we said was that the historic way of doing business in the academic environment cannot be sustained in order to be successful in a competitive market throughout the next 25 years. And that was quite a bit of a conversation, which was a fun part of the conversation. Now, all right, let's look at the vision. By 2036, the ETSU Academic Health Science Center will first be fully integrated in all areas of interprofessional education and scholarship. There's a lot of detail there, and I don't want to take up all the time because I want us to have conversation about this. But basically, that first statement of common resources in administration, leadership, practice models, employer groups, student education, if we really want to be an academic health science center on the forefront in 25 years, this stuff needs to happen together. This is all about breaking down the silos. That second statement, you can imagine how hard this is going to be, but remember, we got 25 years to do it. Faculty and staff who identify with the Academic Health Science Center first, discipline-specific, specialty secondary. Wow. We have a ways to go, don't we? I mean, I'm a pharmacist. Stay out of my pharmacy space. You know, you can't come back here. We even put you up on a 2-foot pedestal there in the pharmacy so you can't get up to us, you know. And then we put a chain link fence in front of you, and we may come down and talk to you, or maybe we won't. We've got to get away from that environment of I am and the whole team environment. I've been in 2 meetings in the last 48 hours where the conversation started and ended with our model of providing care in the future won't work. That it's got to be a team-based practice. So it's fun to say that, but there's so many people saying it, it's starting to get legs. Okay, let me just move on quickly and we'll go to the other slides. Secondly, exemplify a visible collaborative practice model to better serve our community and educate our students. And what we're talking about there is that model of team-based providing of care. that really has to be seen and not talked about. Fully integrated practice models, home care, telemedicine, etc. And that our Academic Health Science Center practice sites will have a rural community focus, same-day service, and I think that, Katie, wasn't that your comment about same-day service? I believe that you brought that, let's do this today, don't talk about it. And then we'll focus on outcomes, and there's a transparency utilizing team-based practice model. The next result was include a College of Dentistry and implement other programs that meet workforce demands and enhance the practice and research capacity of the Academic Health Science Center faculty and students. Now, this is where I think everybody on the committee thought we were going to start and stop. What do we need to start in the next 25 years at ETSU? And really this became a component of our conversation, but the conversation really didn't resolve totally around what new colleges do we need. What new services do we need? We put dentistry in there because, one, it was on the list that the large committee on 125 said you need to decide about, and the work had already been done. There's a full report on the feasibility of a college of dentistry. And we were told, don't worry about the money. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff that has to happen with the College of Dentistry, but if they want to know how the committee felt, the committee said, let's get that out on the table and deal with it first. Do we think it makes sense? And the results of the committee was, we think it makes sense. So that's why it's there. Now, there's this long list of other disciplines and things that we could become involved in that we talked about. And rather than list all of those, this is what we came up with some detail. That will include a College of Dentistry, and that our current offerings, for example, PhD or dual degree programs, will be expanded or further developed with a focus on enhancing the research capacity of the university. And then this statement is also very important. Other new programs may be created based on thoughtful consideration of factors such as ETSU and Academic Health Science Center mission, student choice, community need, and market demand. We had some people on our committee from the folks that hire our students when they graduate. And we turned to them and asked them a lot of questions. And one of the things they said is, I won't use any specific examples. We brought up one example of a particular focus, and they said, well, you can train those folks all day long. We won't hire them. We don't need them. We think there's a better, cheaper, faster way to do that. Well, sitting in a room, we think, well, that maybe it's what we need to do, is have this particular profession that we train folks at ETSU. But if the market doesn't support it and they can't get jobs, you can see what's going to happen. The students won't come. We can have a wonderful program, but nobody's going to graduate from it and get a job. So that's why we put this statement here that says we're constantly looking at the market demand, we're constantly looking at community need, talking to the employers, saying we're thinking about starting this program. What do you think? And that's occurring already, as you might imagine. In the full report, we had a list of some things that we had discussed as possibilities, but we didn't feel strongly that we could recommend straight up saying we need to start this particular profession at ETSU without that market analysis. Develop a research infrastructure with identified centers that will allow faculty and students to excel in the interprofessional and translational research. And there are people in the room that's smarter than me about the research capacities of our university and what this means. That I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but I'm sure that they can speak up and talk about the research components of our program and our report. But we did focus on what the mission is going to be and trying to identify and break down some of the barriers to research for the university. We talked about a lot of public-private partnerships, a whole area that really hadn't been investigated fully. Create identifiable space for interprofessional practice and research to fulfill our mission. We had to have some conversation about physical space. And if they're going to ask us to dream, they're going to ask us to dream. And we said the Academic Health Science Center should reside on a single campus with parking.
Got to say that.
I know. It's on film. Talked about a lot of different campuses, and especially our interprofessional education activities having an identity and having a structure. You can feel it and move into that room and see it happening. So a lot of physical space issues, and again, state-of-the-art technology. We continue to talk about that. Now, we were asked to say, okay, if we did all that stuff, and we said, if the committee said, yes, we're going to do everything that your task force said, what would be some 5-year milestones and some 10-year milestones? This is sort of an interesting thing. So if you go back and look at what we said where we need to be going, if we went there, and once again, that's the job of the university and people outside this room to decide exactly where we're going to go. In 5 years, we would have hired a dean for the College of Dentistry. We would have implemented a funding model for that college. Conversation about renovating Building 60 on the VA campus. Building 60 is one of the last buildings on the VA campus that is sitting pretty much idle, begging to be saved. It's probably 100 years old, and we said in 5 years that would be a great place to have a renovation similar to what has happened in Building 7, our building on the College of Pharmacy, where we would have simulation laboratories, research related to interprofessional education. So if we say we want to do interprofessional education, in 5 years it needs to be visible.
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday, the president told us to proceed with planning for that.
All right. Check that off. Hey, way to go. Good deal. All right. We're done. We've had one thing implemented in our plan. You need to drive by that building. This is time out. Don't count my 10 or 15 minutes here. You need to drive by that building. If you haven't seen the College of Pharmacy, please come and walk through it. A 115-year-old building was saved, and that building is going to be a wonderful opportunity. It used to be the fire station for the VA campus over there, and there's even a ramp coming out of the building on the ground floor, and the horse stalls are still in there where they pull the fire wagon. Okay, I'm back on the clock.
Still filled with the same stuff?
Yeah, I would have thought he said that. All right, we talked about developing our research centers, and we'll take a little bit more time with that in a second. And in 10 years, if we have a dean of a College of Dentistry in 5 years, we better be graduating in first class in 10 years, that we would have a center for translational research operational. Graduate students from the PhD program in rehabilitative sciences. Implement the collaborative healthcare informatics and analytics program was one of those areas that we recommended in the full report. Secure identifiable collaborative space throughout the region. This is where it's one thing to set up a model at ETSU of all of us working together and providing care, but in 10 years, it better be something that can be seen throughout the region, not just at ETSU. And then establish Academic Health Science Center for School of Basic Sciences. And this got a lot of conversation. I'm sure you have a lot of questions about that. The committee, if you said you were moving forward 25 years down the road, the conversations came around, why can't the basic scientists be part of the Academic Health Science Center providing education to more than just one college? And then that resulted in why can't it be a college of its own? So a lot of conversation about that, and I'm sure we'll have more conversation about that. And I've finished in 22 minutes. You take off the 2 minutes from the talking about Building 60, I've met the goal. All right. We presented this program this presentation to the committee, and they basically have it now. And I'm happy to see that we have opportunity for a town hall where people can come and give their opinion about not only this report, but the other task force reports, which I really would encourage you to go online and look at it, because as you can see, stuff's already happening with the recommendations from those reports. And a lot of these are big ideas that can't happen overnight, but we got a listening committee and we got a listening president. So I'm not sure the Millennium Center will hold enough people, but let's make sure it doesn't hold enough people. All right.
So I want to make one comment before we get into our Q&A. Anyway, the reason we want to do this today is because as we embark on our CEF reaccreditation, this has implications for how we think about ourselves and sort of where we're going. And so we thought it was important to have this conversation with you before we meet next week to really, with our all-hands faculty meeting, to kick off our CEF reaccreditation. So that's the purpose, that's the context. And I guess now let's just, if you guys don't mind forming a little bit of a panel, sort of in the front, if you don't mind, Michael, and we'll just begin to have some questions and answers. And I'll take the mic between people for the camera. So I'm going to ask the first question. So, Dr. Crouch.
Yes.
Can you give some examples of the types of interprofessional education activities that were done last semester and that are being done this semester? For example, what was done in pharmacy. I can give an example of what we did in public health, et cetera.
Sure.
Well, again, we have 4 competencies that we want each student to complete. So each semester we want to put forward really a nice, if you will, cafeteria menu that people can choose from so they have lots of different opportunities. Last semester, I led the activity for the College of Pharmacy. So each college puts forward one activity. And I'd also like to mention that the Department of Psychology is also putting forward activities and have students involved because they're so intertwined with what we do in the Academic Health Sciences Center. But for the College of Pharmacy, what I put forward was basically a simulation experience. It was where students read a short chapter about hypertensive crisis, hypertensive emergency, hypertensive urgency before they came in. And they were basically presented with a case in a simulation environment of someone whose blood pressure who went from reasonably controlled to uncontrolled based on admission to the hospital. And all the students were involved in groups of 5 where they went in on their own, worked through this case for about 30 minutes, and then we had a really powerful debriefing session at the very end. And this was focused on roles and responsibilities. So we talked about the roles and responsibilities of the different team members, and we had representatives from the College of Public Health who talked about ramifications after. Every discipline was represented. It was really a powerful experience and very interactive and met all the needs from the competency. This semester we have 8 activities that are going to be put forward, hitting all of those. The College of Pharmacy's spring activity is a movie that talks about values and ethics. Major motion picture where students read something before they come in, they watch a movie together, kind of sometimes pausing the movie to talk and debate about some values and ethics and really having kind of a debriefing session on that. And then did you want to talk about the 2 that you put forward?
I'll mention them. Last semester, College Public Health activity was the film Contagion. We had 18 or 20 folks, maybe 15 to 18 folks that came and met in this room, and we divided them up into interprofessional teams, and they had to respond to specific sort of mini cases that existed in the film and sort of how they would have handled those as an interprofessional team. This coming semester, we actually have the Adobe experience out at Valley Brook, where we're going to take folks out later in March and have them go through the brick making experience and kind of go in the other direction a little bit and have folks get their hands dirty and have them connect in teams toward building a whole bunch of bricks that we can use on the Valley Brook property. So that's a teams and teamwork competency building exercise. So what kind of questions do you guys have for the panelists here? Marianne?
Okay. I have, 2 kind of joint questions, but I wanted to ask about the evaluation of the pilot. And I noticed you had the informative, formative, transformative. And are you evaluating those dimensions of it? And then I have to ask about the real track, how that fits into the mix here, because it is, in my estimation, a great interprofessional activity, course, multi-level thing that we're doing on campus.
Well, I would agree with you regarding the rural track. So let me answer that. The rural track, because there are courses that are involved in those courses have been vetted as good interprofessional courses that count towards the interprofessional expectations of this. So they're separate, yet there's lots of cross-linking between the rural health track and this interprofessional education program. Again, our goal was to ensure that we're building on what we already have and taking advantage of these wonderful programs that we have. Now, the second question was regarding assessment. We're doing assessment in a number of ways. Our committee has actually been subdivided into subcommittees, and there's one subcommittee on research. So we intentionally developed a research proposal that went to the IRB, where we are evaluating this program. So we're students had to obviously go through the consent to be part of this, and basically we're evaluating them before and after experiences to see if they're really what they're getting out of the competencies. We plan to follow these students out to the employers and have a survey to evaluate the employers to say, are these students different? Do they have these capabilities, these knowledge, these skills, these competencies, etc.? We also have a standard assessment as part of the program to ensure that we feel like the students are getting what they need out of it. We vet these activities. There's a vetting committee that goes through. There's a specific proposal form to complete these activities. And we're spot checking each of these activities to ensure that they're really meeting the competency that we expect them to meet and that the students really are. So we're really assessing this in the short term. We're also doing a very strong methodological approach because we need to have evidence to say, does interprofessional education truly lead to what they were calling for, which is interprofessional collaboration and teamwork when they get out to the real world? So does that answer your question? Okay.
That's why we're...
The other mention is in terms of we have 45 students who are part of the program, and someone may ask, well, how did you choose those students? And so what we did is because, again, we tried to make this a very strong methods approach. Basically, it was a lottery approach where all students in every college, so it's first year professional or graduate students from the College of Public Health. First-year students from professional or graduate students from nursing, same for clinical and rehabilitative health sciences. And because of the programs, it's second-year medical students and second-year pharmacy students. So those are the student populations that we drew from. And so every student was eligible. We did a lottery, and they were given the opportunity and asked, would you like to participate in this? There is no requirement for this. It's really up to you. And based on that, there are 4 groups that we've identified. Students that weren't even offered the opportunity, students that were offered the opportunity and turned it down, students who were offered the opportunity and said yes. And all of those students would fill out a survey, and then a 4th group would be students who said, no, I'm not interested and I don't want to fill out the survey, and obviously that's within their prerogative. So we actually have 4 groups. And so that we're following those 4 groups as ways to try to identify benefits and outcomes of the program. So all of these students volunteered, but we tried to do it in a strong way so that we had some evaluation that we could pull from this for the long term.
On a related note, what kind of numbers of individuals actually were offered the opportunity versus the 45 that actually did yes?
Okay, so the question is, how many people were offered and how many actually of the 45 that subsequently? I'd say probably somewhere up to 100 were offered and 45 took. It varied a little bit from school to school. So that was a concern, from a method standpoint, we're a little concerned, there may be some differences that are just inherent. But I'd say we probably went to around 90 to 100 students that were offered and 45 of those subsequently.
Can you get a lot of data on the reasons for saying no?
We are collecting. The question is the data as it relates to why people said no. We did ask them to provide us some feedback on that. There's also another instrument that we're using that has been validated. If you were to say in North America, who's the leader for interprofessional education? It'd be the University of Toronto, and they have a wonderful instrument that we've been using in terms of getting students' mindset and thoughts about interprofessional education before and after the experience. And so we eventually will go to those other students who said no to get additional information because we do want to understand limits, barriers, and perceptions.
And for the prologue, I want to add, we were shooting for about 45 or 50 students to go through this pilot. So we figured maybe 15% of each class, if we could compile them into that 45 or 50. So that's really where the numbers came from.
And you didn't mention a control or comparison, because it might be.
Well, in many respects, as it relates to control, our control or comparison would be those students who didn't go through the program.
Or getting the same data.
Well, the next would be to have them complete that comparable form to get some perspectives, and also following them. Again, it's not what we educate them on, it's what they do when they leave that probably is most important. Great questions.
So how about, we got 10 or 15 minutes left. Let's how about some questions about the process for 125? Surely that prompted some interest. Rachel.
I'd just be interested in knowing if you've identified model institutions or other regional universities that you kind of like to follow their trajectory in terms of the timeline for establishing a dental school, the timeline for establishing a school for basic sciences, if there's sort of a logic behind that.
I'll speak to it a little bit. Yeah, the question was, have we looked at other our peers, and how long has it taken them to accomplish some of the things that we might have in there? We have some parallel activities going on that was in addition to what the task force did. The dental committee that made the recommendation a year ago now that ETS should consider dental school did a lot of data collection on the number of dental schools in the country. ADEA has wonderful data. If you ever want to do research on dental education, go to the ADEA, you can get data. And so we got a lot of information from them on how they're normally funded, what their curriculum looks like, where their students come from, and all of that. We talked to East Carolina extensively because they've just established a dental school. It took them 10 years. And they started with $125 million funding from the state legislature. So, I mean, they really had started with the money already in hand, which is kind of interesting. And we know that's a long process. We're also looking at, and this has been something where we've been trying to identify what academic health science centers look like, what they should look like, and what some of the components are. The Association of Academic Health Centers last weekend, I'm on their board, and last weekend we just got a report that showed distributions of numbers of programs or colleges within academic health centers, which was one of the things I was interested in knowing. And we are a little above the median on having more colleges within our academic health center than others. Most of them have 1 to 3. Several of them have 5, and just a few of them have 6 or 7. So we're looking for data like that. We're also have a humongous spreadsheet that we're trying to refine right now. You may have heard us say that there's only one other institution in the country that looks like ETSU as an academic health science center, and that's Ohio State. There are others that come close. Texas A&M, for instance, has all of the programs we do, except they don't have the allied health sciences in their health science program. They have that's in A&M University itself rather than in the Health Sciences Center. So it's just some little quirks like that that's really hard to determine. So yes, we did look at some national data, and those are some examples, but there's unfortunately not a how-to book out there to get us to some of these places, but we do know that everything has to be done in a logical progression to get to the end. Good question.
Question relating to accrediting issues for the different colleges as you look towards 10 years out, the whole concept of college of basic sciences, and also before that, the true interdisciplinary, not so much siloed reality. Is there any accrediting body currently in the mix looking at academic health science centers that is more of an all-encompassing accrediting body?
Well, I suggested that last weekend at our board meeting that maybe we ought to, that maybe one of the things we ought to think about doing is we ought to have some people cringe at another accrediting agency. But if we could have some kind of certification or some kind of certificate or recognition for institutions that are developing interprofessional programs and begin to develop some kind of standard so that there can be some expectation. So we were doing some visioning at that retreat, and so I threw that into the mix. But I think that's something that we need to move forward on.
It was essential. We pulled out one of our areas that would pretty much negate our accreditation.
Right. Well, now, one of the reasons we've set up our interprofessional program the way that we have is to get around some of the identified barriers, the barriers of time, when programs start, the accreditation requirements when curricula are already filled to the max with what you have to have. So rather than adding additional courses that people may or may not be able to take, so we've tried to work around the barriers without disturbing accreditation. But we are finding that every profession is beginning to really focus on interprofessional education, and they're putting it into their accreditation standards. I see you jumping over.
There's something to say. One example where this is actually becoming a reality is continuing education, where the accrediting bodies are coming together, I think, in pharmacy, nursing, medicine. I'm missing dentistry and maybe somebody else, but where they're coming together and they're doing some accreditation programs collectively. And the interesting thing is that not that, but that they are coming together and that they're talking. So I think that's a first step, because that's got to be addressed.
Yeah, it's like that's an initial thing. You have to work towards the end of accreditation, otherwise you're just working against you.
Right. I know at least in pharmacy, been through two sets of standards now, and the first set of standards that we used to develop the College of Pharmacy, I think interprofessional education was mentioned 3 times. The standards that we are now under is like approaching 30 times that it's mentioned, where it's actually in a written standard, and I'll bet you almost every discipline is having the same thing.
Oh, yeah. It's up and coming with public health. Topic of conversation every meeting.
One question I haven't heard I thought we might get is, you've mentioned that our interprofessional program is for graduate and professional students. What about undergraduate students? They're next. We needed to control the size of our pilot population, and when we go into this with all of our students, we felt like our population of students at graduate and professional level would be easier for us to get our feet on the ground with. But we aren't forgetting our undergraduate students, and we know that that's going to be very important in the future. So there's an opportunity, if some of you want to be pioneers in that area, to help us with that.
I just wanted to see if you could expand on what type of business model that you're looking at future attempts to sustain the colleges over the next 25 years.
Bake sales.
She's not kidding. She's not kidding. Actually, our conversation around that had related to entrepreneurship, market competition, partnerships, to where the old days of here's the money you got and that's all you get, and whatever you can do with it, you do with it, which is a model that sort of in the academic environment, that's been the way it is. I think the new model sustaining in the future is that entrepreneurship model that has people like Randy and me responsible for going out and trying to figure out how to fund situations outside of the normal funding mechanism. And then that's the financial piece, but that's only one piece. The other piece is going out there and from a marketing and public relations perspective, which maybe in academia we didn't really have to do that much because we're a university, people come to us. With people going to college now without leaving their rooms, we laugh at it, and it's becoming one of the largest universities in the world. That new model of trying to figure out who the customer is, what they want, how do we get them what they want, but still be responsible for the academic integrity of the program. A lot of questions about that, and trying to bring the the customers into the market, into the university, asking them what they want, and us trying to figure out how we meet those needs. That's a little foreign from decades in the past, but I think that competition piece is going to be absolutely critical moving forward. Just my opinion. Yes?
I had a question about the research centers, which I believe was one of the recommendations. Again, multidisciplinary research centers, I assume focused on priority areas for the health science center in the region. And you also mentioned, barriers. And I know when it comes to those research centers, there are a number of structural and other barriers that have not facilitated the development over the years. So I'm just wondering, what the task force's thoughts were about those barriers and how we might begin to bring them down.
This is interesting because several of you know that there wasn't a subcommittee for research, but that research bubbled up in several of the subcommittees themselves, and so this is. I think it was a topic that was a consistent theme throughout the committee for 125 subcommittee on health, but also in the one that included Dr. Hillhouse. And so I think it was a consistent theme throughout ours and theirs, which is the Extramural Resources Committee subcommittee, that spoke to the need to create research centers. The question is, how do we get to the centers now? How do we find the gravity, of a couple of 3 or 4 funded investigators that are speaking to an important problem, and so on? We put forward an idea of a translational research center, and the rest is sort of to be determined. Taking the next steps of let's look across campus and see where our strengths are, and see where NIH, NSF are going, and trying to strategize, how to best get there. I think that's the approach that we're going to take. I don't think we identified any disease-specific centers yet. And I think we're really looking at a strengths-based approach going forward. Now, the second question was really about barriers. What identify barriers? I don't think we spoke to that in the subcommittee. Yeah. What was it specifically about IRB?
Speed.
The speed of IRB. Yeah.
Spending in office infrastructure, like a office infrastructure is
right. Yeah, an office, that's true, and shared resources between the colleges and communication. I think all those are important.
And there was one other bullet there, too, that really speaks to research beyond. I know your question was on centers, but we had a lot of discussion that, we have, I believe, 9 doctoral programs of the 13 that the university has. But as we look forward to growing, one of the things that I believe is going to be essential is that we develop more PhD programs. Our first professional degree programs are important. They're workforce needed. Many of them are research-based. But to get the collection of faculty, the culture that does do more with indirects and back to departments, and the ability to have more research assistants and those kinds of things, we've got to begin to build our culture that's going to support research. And that's part of, I think, that comes with our maturity and growth as an academic health science center.
Doctoral education and research growth are intertwined.
Is it time for class?
I'll continue to work with Dr. Calhoun and Crouch here. If anyone wants to stick around for any additional questions, Dr. Bishop and Dr. Wyckoff have to leave right now.